is also now a 4-story building, which is originally 5 stories. So in both cases here, we've been able to reduce the height of the building on the west side, primarily for trying to provide a better buffer between the single family and our development.
So, Greg, can you go back
Yes,
to
sir.
that? So what is the current height along the salmon color area? What is that 3-story? How many feet are you
It's
like?
at the far north corner, right up against Happiness, it's 34 feet high. And as the land slopes down to the south, at the south end of that section, it's 44 feet high. And then the more orange section, further south of that, is approximately 45 feet high.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so just to give you a little bit better perspective on what we're looking at.
Excuse me, Greg.
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry. Can you go back to that previous slide?
Yeah.
Greg? So what are the current heights of these of the buildings that are on there now?
They're about 30 feet.
30?
Yeah, because they're generally 2.5 stories plus a roof, 30 to 35 feet.
Okay.
Depends on which one it is. Some of them sit a little higher out of the ground based on the topography. Some are pretty much flat, 2 stories plus a pitched roof.
Okay.
So those are closer to 30 feet. Some of the others sit out a little bit more. They might be closer to 35 feet.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so these next slides show you elevations of both the apartments, the hotel, and the office building. So this first slide shows you 2 elevations of the apartment. The top one is the east elevation. So if you were standing on Kenwood Road and you could look through the hotel or the office building, this is the view you would see of the apartment building. And as you can see on this east end, it's all 5 stories in construction. And I'll point out as well that we have shown in the top middle of that elevation one sign for the building, and at the bottom right-hand corner, a wall-mounted, basically directional sign for the apartment building. The elevation at the bottom is the north elevation. So if you're standing in Jewish's parking lot, looking across Happiness, this is what you would see. And one thing I think that's interesting to point out here is that on the far right-hand side of that elevation, that's the west edge of our building. And as you can see, that is 3 stories now. So we've taken this from 5 to 4 to 3. So, and then it steps up to 4, and then it goes further back and it's 5. But you can see down at the left side of that elevation, it's a 5-story building. I'll also point out there that there's an apartment sign shown on the top left of that elevation, and a directional sign at the bottom right there to direct people into the garage. One other thing I should point out there is that just to the left of the right edge, you see a gray area. That's our service area for the multifamily. And that's important because we've had several residents ask us about trash removal. So the way we work properties like this is that the trash comes down through the building, it's carted underground to a trash compactor, which is located here. It's compacted, and once a week, that whole unit is pulled out, emptied, and then brought back. So there's no trash that comes outside of the building. It's all brought down below and then carted over to the compactor.
Greg, so are you saying you're going to compact the trash and you're going to keep it enclosed?
Yes.
In that trash
Yes.
compactor until it's
Yes.
removed?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's in a service bay here at this end of the building. But it all comes down, it's carted over, put into the compactor and compacted, and then stored there until it's picked up. Okay, the next slide shows the other 2 elevations of the building. The top one is the west elevation. So if you're sitting in a home on Frolic, on the east side of Frolic, this is the view that you would have. The left side of that top building is the northernmost part of Frolic, and it starts at 3 stories and then goes up to 4 and then up to 5. The right section of that rendering is actually the part of the building where if you look down by the swimming pool, between the swimming pool and the retention basin, that's what you're looking at from that western view. And actually, the interesting point there is that from the property line to the building down in that section is 160 feet. Now, your zoning code requires a 20-foot minimum setback for buildings from property lines.
Greg, would you repeat that, please?
Yes, the building code requires a 20-foot.
Before that, I'm sorry. 161?
The distance from our building to the west property boundary in that lower section where it comes across the detention basin is 160 feet.
Okay, thank you.
The building setbacks required are 20 feet. The north section of that side of the building is 42 feet from the property line, and the south boundary section of the building is about 41 feet from the property line. So in any place where a building is near residential, our setback is 40 feet plus. There were a couple of questions that came up with respect to balconies. I don't treat them much differently than I do windows because you look out both of them, but balconies obviously do allow you to be outside. One of the requests that we heard from neighbors was that they didn't want a lot of balconies, people looking down into their homes. So on this west elevation, you can see that only on the ends of the north part of that building do we have balconies. And so all the interior units there are now gone. And so the balconies that were part of that are not there anymore. And then if you look at the south elevation, which is if you're on one of the houses on Dunedin looking north, the whole facade of the building that faces Dunedin does not have balconies on the side that faces Dunedin. We do have what are called Juliet balconies, but they're about a foot deep, so it's not something you can go out onto. It's an architectural feature that basically just gives the building more character, but somebody can't go out and sit on it or actually do anything on it. Also here on the south elevation, if you look to the far right at the top of the building, which is the corner of the building closest to Kenwood Road, there's a sign on the building there that hopefully catches a little of the traffic coming north on Kenwood. And there is I thought there was one on, no, there are no signs on the west. I was thinking of the other elevation. So there's no building signage on the west. So no building signage, lighting, or anything that would impact the residential neighborhood. The next slide is the elevations for the office building. Again, this is a 6-story structure, primarily brick, stone, and glass. And again, these are kind of not final drawings, but they give you a good idea of the concept that we're looking at for that building. And again, we want to complement the other architecture and buildings that exist in the corridor currently. The next slide is the proposed elevations for the hotel. And there are all 4 elevations shown there. There are also signage shown for the hotel. The north elevation has 1 sign on the building. That's the elevation that faces Jewish. The east elevation, which faces Kenwood Road, has a sign on the building. The west elevation, which faces the apartment building, basically has signs above the retail spaces on the canopies, and also a sign above the entrance to the hotel. And the south elevation, which is the one you see as you go north on Kenwood Road towards the building, has a sign at the top of the building as well.
Yeah, I think we can put this whole proposal, or presentation
We'll
up
put
on
the
our
presentation
website.
up on the township website.
Yeah.
Okay, the next slide shows signage. And basically, this is ground mount signage. So it just gives you an idea of what we're looking at in terms of wayfinding, monument, service entrance signage, building, basically these are at pedestrian level type signs to help people find out where they're going. The next slide just shows examples of what these signs are allowed to be based on your zoning code. So without going through all of them, for example, a monument sign can be on a 3-foot podium and cannot be larger than 8 feet by 8 feet. So all the signage examples that are shown here are based on the requirements of the signage section of your zoning code. The next slide just basically shows some examples of what those signs might look like. We have not done final design on the signs, but your sign requirements in your zoning code are very specific in terms of size and how they can be lit. The next slide just shows the parking dimensions. Again, this is part of the PD submission package requirement. This is the lower level of the east garage. Just shows the parking bay sizes and the aisle widths. The next slide shows that for the full parking level underneath the hotel and office. And the next slide illustrates the bay depths and aisle depths for the surface level of the east garage and the west garage. The next slide is a cross-section of the building, so it gives you an idea of how these buildings work with the existing topography. If you look at the left side of the diagram, you can see that there is a line 1 story above the lowest parking. That's the level of the entry into the the west parking garage. And you can see that there are 3 levels above that. If you look at the far right-hand side of the drawing, you can see the level of Kenwood Road. There's a half a level of parking above that, below that, another full level of parking, and then the 6 stories above that. So it just gives you an idea of how the buildings work within the topography of the site. Okay, this next slide shows you some before and after renderings from Frolic and Dunedin. The bottom left photo is just a photo of the existing conditions. The photo above that from 7982 Frolic shows what it would look like with the building in place there. And you can see obviously the building, but also the privacy fence and the evergreen trees planted along there. The second photo is from 7934 Frolic, showing existing below and the proposed conditions with the building in place. Obviously, these pictures were taken in the summer. They'll look different in the winter, but that's all we had to go by at this point in time. And the other one is from 4712 Dunedin, and you really, based on the foliage today, have a difficult time seeing much of the building at all at this time of the year.
Let's point in the right direction.
Excuse me?
Let's point in northwest.
That is correct. Yes, that's looking north. Pretty much almost due north from there. Okay. We took these a while ago. I can't tell you what the degree is from 0 or from 360 degrees. The next slide just gives you some of the typical amenities that we include in our multifamily. If we can get to that next one. There we go. All of our developments, particularly our luxury developments, have a full range of amenities, and I'm just trying to give you kind of an idea of the type of product that we develop today. Everything from fitness rooms to swimming pools to jacuzzis to billiards rooms and even a pet spa is now a required amenity at all of our properties. But just giving you an idea. The next thing I want to do is really talk about the concerns and the input that we've gotten from the neighbors, from Frolic and Dunedin and other parts of the neighborhood in Holiday Acres. And I want to say that we've gotten a lot of input. We've had lots of meetings with residents. We've gotten good comments from them. I know it's difficult for them based on, none of us want change generally, and I understand that. We've listened to what they've said. We've made significant changes to the project, and we've gone to great lengths to mitigate any visual impact from our development. But I want to go through these so you have a clear understanding of what we've heard and what we've been able to do. So the first slide was a misconception that we were buying houses on Frolic to expand the development. We are committing to you today, and I said this for a while, that we have no intention of trying to expand the development beyond what you see in front of you today. We do have a house on Frolic under contract that was brought to us by the property owner several months ago. Some residents refer to it as the drug house. But it is a house that had seen a partial renovation. That stopped, and the property owner called us and asked us if we would be interested in buying the house. Our sole and only reason for buying that house is to finish the rehab and sell it. But we are fully committed to, we have no intention of expanding this development beyond the boundaries that you see here tonight. Some other people have approached us about purchasing their homes, and I believe that the majority of those requests are based on their belief, feeling that post-development, that the values of their homes are going to go down. There are several studies out there that show that this is absolutely not the case. The quote in this particular slide is from Urban Land Institute, and they went out and did several studies to look at the value of homes adjacent to or close proximity to mixed-use retail commercial developments, and found that there was no significant difference in the rate of increase in value, and in some cases those homes closer to the mixed-use developments actually increased at a faster rate. The next slide is the issue of traffic through the Holiday Acres neighborhood. We've had lots of discussion with residents, lots of input. At the end of the day, from what we could determine from the numerous conversations and meetings we had, the best solution to keep our traffic out of that neighborhood would be to close Happiness just to the west of our development. So that is what we're proposing to the township. This prevents any traffic from our development coming into the Frolic neighborhood, and it also cuts off the existing cut-through traffic from Happiness that comes in to a certain extent from Galbraith. In addition to that, we've had some discussions with residents, not necessarily adjacent to our site, but within that larger neighborhood, who have indicated concern about not only the speed of traffic through their neighborhood, either coming maybe from Orchard, from Montgomery, from Galbraith, wherever it might be. And so we would hope and would like to work with the township to come up with some traffic calming measures on different streets in that neighborhood. There have been a lot of complaints to us that traffic that goes through there is going too fast. They don't stop at the stop signs, and we're committed to work with the township to participate in whatever effort the township determines might be the best way to calm the traffic that is going through that neighborhood. The next comment that we've had obviously several times is that there's just too much mass and density. But when you ask people about what that means, it generally comes down to two things: traffic and traffic. And so what we did is, again, we believe have come up with a great solution for traffic possibly going into the Holiday Acres neighborhood by closing off Happiness Way. And the other thing that we've looked at, and we'll talk about in a few minutes, is the traffic on Kenwood Road and the Kenwood Road corridor. But the other thing that's happened is that we looked at other developments like this, not only here in Cincinnati, but a couple of outside of our market, just to get a gauge of what those look like. And the result of that is that in the next slide, this is the Kenwood collection, and it's a total project size of 618,000 square feet of leasable space. Its density is about 76,000 square feet per acre. Our project is 541,000 square feet of leasable space and a density of 74,000 square feet per acre. So it's essentially the same kind of density as you have at the collection. The next project we looked at is Rookwood Exchange Phase 3. That has about 82,000 square feet per acre, and again, our project is 74,000 square feet. The next one is really interesting for a couple of reasons. While it's not in Cincinnati, this is the Allure at South Park, which is in Charlotte, right just south of downtown and next to the South Park Mall. 404,000 square feet of space, 118,000 square feet per acre, compared to our project, which is 74,000 square feet per acre. The really interesting thing here is if you look at the aerial, you can see that the entire area is very dense, and it's adjacent to homes that range from $400,000 to $1.25 million in value. And again, I think it's another testament that this kind of development not only does not have a negative impact on values, but it actually generally we see a positive impact on single-family values. The next slide is that question about how and if we're protecting the residential neighborhood. Well, first of all, we are protecting the neighborhood because there can't be any, and we've committed to not have any development any further west of where we are.